My name is Brian Harris. I'm a retired detective sergeant from the Houston Police Department Homicide Division. I worked in the Homicide Division for almost 22 years.
Along with a small amount of cocaine, marijuana, and hashish.
It was a Sunday morning.
25 people.
I'm sipping my first sips of coffee. And sure enough, cell phone went off, and I knew it.
This is Harris.
Patrol had informed our homicide desk that there was a dead body across from Jones High School, located in southeast Houston. Mike was at the scene upon my arrival.
My name is Michael Perez. I've been with the Homicide Division for about 3 months. This would be my first scene as a lead investigator.
Mike didn't have a partner assigned to him, so I volunteered until we could get Mike a permanent partner.
Brian Harris had a reputation as being a good investigator. I knew that if I asked a question and I thought was dumb, he wouldn't think it was a dumb question.
Morning, Detective.
Morning.
So what do we got?
So far, not much.
Perez explains this is a woman. He's guessing late 20s. There is no identification, so he has no idea who she is. He believes she has multiple gunshot wounds to the head, but it's very difficult to tell because of the hair and the blood and the mess.
Mike and I then started looking at the crime scene itself. How does that body get there? We noticed that there's what we call transfer blood. The blood evidence told us that the vehicle stopped and a body was dragged out of the vehicle. And then her body is dumped as if it was just a piece of garbage.
All right, let's go ahead and get her up here.
The body is pulled out on the side of the road. Once we were able to get a closer look at the victim, it was clear. This was a gunshot wound to the back of the head or to the front of the head.
Is it one gunshot wound? Is it two? Is it five? You cannot see until you get this body into a morgue under bright lights and the body has been cleaned.
I noticed that the victim had all her jewelry on her. If it was a robbery, why would she still have her jewelry on her?
There's got to be a story here. Perhaps this is a sexual assault, or is this a domestic violence type situation?
So the information in hand is extremely limited. Who is this person? How did she come to be here? And is there any way we can identify this person?
Murder scene is right across the street from a high school. So we were just hoping those cameras had a wide enough angle that it would have caught the dumping of our victim's body.
Is that surveillance equipment only on during school hours? Where is it pointed? We want to see that video footage. And if there's nothing to it, well, then there's nothing to it, but there could be something.
Turns out they quickly were able to burn a copy and we were able to see the video footage. You see two headlights. And sure enough, right at the spot of where the body is dumped, a vehicle stops. You see some kind of movement going around towards the passenger side of the vehicle, which would be consistent where our transfer blood is. And then you see what looks like somebody dragging something big from the passenger side. There seems to be some kind of movement towards the ditch. And then the vehicle takes off again. It's all making sense. This crime scene's talking to us.
The next day, of course, is the 4th of July. Everyone's getting ready for hamburgers, hot dogs, and beer. But Harris and Perez have a job to do. They're going to go to an autopsy, not a picnic.
Morning, Doc.
The autopsies and wounds tell a story, just like a crime scene tells a story.
It's close contact wound.
So we're looking to see if it's a clean wound, and it's not. You have what's called stippling. That explosion goes into the skin, so it almost looks like burned particles all around the wound. And if the gun is a close impact wound, it will literally brand your skin, and you can't wipe it away.
No signs of projectile.
Any kind of ballistics evidence that was left inside the skull, like say a fired bullet, it would have been really helpful, but we didn't know what kind of weapon we're looking for.
Have you guys got any idea yet?
Not yet. We need to run the prints.
Well, in the state of Texas, they take a fingerprint from you when you get a driver's license. So if this person has a driver's license, there should be a record of her fingerprints.
On July 5th, we get the hit on the fingerprints, and events really started to roll very quickly as far as us being able to determine who our victim was.
The victim is a 31-year-old female named Kumba Cisse. Now, who decided that Kumba needs to go away? Somebody certainly did.
One of the first steps is to interview family members, and that was going to be Mike's job.
Michael Perez is about to make his first death notification to a family. There's not many things uglier than that in that line of work, particularly when you arrive at the door wearing a suit, holding up a badge to identify yourself as the police.
Being the first actual victim's family that I'm going to actually talk to you, of course, I was nervous.
Before you say a word, the person that opens that door knows why you're here and knows what you're going to say, because someone is not home who's supposed to be home.
Mr. Cisse?
You see it in their face. I saw it there every time. They know this is the moment they've dreaded all their lives.
Thank you.
Miss Cisse, she was in shock. She was not really wanting to believe what happened. I asked for some background on her daughter. She told me that she was, a good kid growing up. She had lots of friends.
I am a friend/sister to Kumba. It was real close. She was a sweet person. She didn't like seeing people down, didn't have a bad bone in her body. She had great energy, good vibes, and she was on her way to being something. She was good to me.
Her parents are immigrants from Sierra Leone in Central Africa, but Kumba was born in the United States. She's going places at her young age and has done very well for herself.
Kumba was a mover. She was a shaker, and she was on her path to success. She was modeling, and she had a model career. But she wasn't just satisfied to rest her laurels on being a model.
She was working as the host of an internet radio show, and she would interview people on controversial topics and also present independent hip-hop artists to the community. She had ambition, she had dreams. Kumba Sise seemed to have it going on.
She was gonna use that platform to get to where she needed to be.
It's pretty obvious that Kumba is a together person. She paints a very different picture than you often see among homicide victims who live a dangerous lifestyle. Kumba does not do that.
When was the last time you heard from your daughter?
She was here on Saturday.
Saturday?
Kumba's mother, she had said that Saturday morning at about 11, Kumba showed up.
Hey, Ma! David!
And was talking about going to a party. It was supposed to be later on that evening, and then Kumba left.
Perez asked the family, was there anyone that Kumba was having problems with?
As Mike is hearing information from family members, there are a couple of possibilities as far as potential suspects. One being a former boyfriend in which they had a rocky relationship and he was very bitter.
His name is David Gabriel, and apparently his relationship with Kumba went south over money.
Give me the money. I don't owe you nothing. Leave me alone.
Money can be a very powerful motive. Money drives people. All sorts of things come back to money as a very strong motive in violent crime. Is that what happened with Mr. Gabriel? I think we better find out. But before Perez leaves, Kumba's family provides a final critical piece of information.
What about her car? You guys found it yet?
No, we weren't aware. Can you describe it?
Her brother did say that Kumba had a vehicle, the blue Volkswagen Beetle. So now we have a vehicle missing.
Now Perez has something he can pursue. Here we have a woman shot to death with a single gunshot wound, and the car has been stolen, perhaps, by the person who shot her.
The only thing the video could confirm was that we were dealing with a small, perhaps bubble-shaped type vehicle, the way it was designed, dark in color, but our instinct was telling us, is this a Beetle?
Where is that car? Who has it now? Did he kill for it? Well, we're about to see it. Now, on the 6th of July,
Hey, it's Sergeant Harris. Got a bolo for you.
Harris and Perez put out a bolo to be on the lookout for this car.
2004 Volkswagen Beetle, blue in color.
But before the hit comes back on the car, Perez wants to talk to a bitter ex-boyfriend of Kumba, whose name is David Gabriel.
Kumba did have an abusive boyfriend, but they broke up. Apparently, Kumba had owed some money.
Well, now, come on down, my friend. You are the next contestant on The Murder is Right.
I hear that you and Kumba parted on bad terms.
He says, I'm sure you're aware that Kumba's been murdered, and it's my understanding that you had a dispute with her over money.
That's just a misunderstanding, boy.
He says Kumba had her own money, she had her own job, and she would take care of herself.
Gabriel says the issue was moot. Well, anybody can say that, so we're gonna need some other information, Mr. Gabriel. Where were you on the night this murder occurred?
I was outside of town at a house party.
Can anybody verify that?
Yeah.
Gabriel was in front of a couple of dozen witnesses. Perez checks out the alibi, and they all independently confirm that David Gabriel was present all evening at this party.
Appreciate you.
So Gabriel is out. Homicide investigation is a series of challenges, and initially it's often more bad news than good. You cannot lose your resolve. You have to play the game. You often hear people say, well, I'll just have to wait for a break. No, you don't wait for anything. You make your own breaks. You make your own luck. In the case of this Volkswagen, this car is involved in a homicide. And it doesn't take very long for somebody to say, hey, we have that car.
Lo and behold, by Texas Southern University, there's a report of a vehicle fire.
This car is found across the street from a Texas Southern University dormitory building. A burned out blue Volkswagen Bug. Well, who's responsible for this mess?
The arson investigators run the vehicle identification number. They see that it's linked to our homicide report and the death of Kenda.
So they go to the vehicle examination building.
I'm Detective Perez, this is Sergeant Harris.
This is her car. This eliminates a carjacking. Why steal a car at gunpoint and then set it on fire?
You know, it's not as burned up in the back as you might think.
People forget this. Fire needs oxygen. And when you roll up all the windows and then you set the car on fire, it did some serious damage, but it's not going to last very long.
It's a panic attempt at the destruction of evidence. You're going to try to burn a car with a gallon of gasoline with the windows rolled up? You're not exactly the brightest bulb in the fixture, and you don't have much of a plan. It's not a carjacking. It's none of those things. It's somebody she knows, someone she's connected to. That's who killed her. They examine this car, and they discover blood on the inside of the driver's door.
We requested swabs of DNA be taken.
All right, thank you for your time.
All right.
And we're hoping upon hope that at Texas Southern University, perhaps that there's video.
So I drove to check the area out where the vehicle was burned. And I was able to have their surveillance pulled so we can view that video.
When they review that surveillance footage, someone abandons that Volkswagen Beetle car at 2:07 a.m. on the 4th of July. And in the footage, returns a day later on the 5th of July in the company of someone driving a Buick LeSabre.
You see the outline. Clearly, it's the Volkswagen Bug. And then a figure starts rummaging around in that vehicle. The next thing you see is a big flash, a big burst. And then as they're literally running away, and the vehicle is in flames. Who brought that person to that scene? Somebody's helping this killer cover their tracks.
Now we have not one, but two mystery players.
While I was doing the research on the vehicle, I received a phone call from a man named Carlton Turney. He said that he's a concert promoter. He has an ID that was found.
This individual had called up Perez and said he'd been following this story on the news.
He was putting on a party, and he rented out a warehouse in the southeast side of town, further east of where the body was found. The party was Saturday, July 2nd, the night of the murder. He said it ended about 10:30, 11 o'clock at night. Later on that evening, he got a phone call from this guy who owns the warehouse. One of your people from your party dropped their ID. So this probably belongs to one of them.
He hands the ID card to Perez and Harris, and it's the ID card of Kenda Cisse.
I noticed there was some blood on the bottom corner of the ID card.
Not only is it her ID, it is smeared with blood. For now, you have a working theory that Kenda was at this party late on Saturday night, so the likelihood is great that the shooting occurs in the parking lot. and somehow or other, the ID card falls out of that car. The problem is the identity of the person behind this is still a mystery. Who are they, and what did they want this young woman dead? Now, Harris and Perez are convinced that someone Kumba knew killed her. So they're going to focus on who knows her well. They begin by going to the internet radio station, Style Radio, and speaking to the general manager, a Donald Hilliard.
I want to talk to you about one of your hosts, Kumba Cisse.
Yeah, Kumba. That was my girl.
Kumba was well regarded by her boss at that station, Don Hilliard. And Don Hilliard thought this woman was going to have a national following one day.
You are listening to Houston's leading internet radio show.
She had it. She had it. She had that radio voice. She had that personality.
She really was the real deal.
Mr. Hilliard explains that Kumba has a boyfriend that on occasion was a co-host with her.
Don revealed crucial information about Kumba's current boyfriend.
His name was Leroy Stutz. Now, this is the first time Harris and Perez have heard that name.
We would have good shows, you know.
Kumba, recently she'd been allowing Leroy Stutz to partake in the radio broadcast.
Do you believe in generational curses? And if so,
They discussed music, lifestyle. She was always a go-getter. She was gonna make sure she did what she needed to do to get where she wanted to be. And that made him jealous. He didn't like it.
The police learned that Kumba had invited another woman to co-host one of the programs.
Yes, wedges have to go. I keep telling you, Drake loves waffle fries. Does he?
And when Stutz found out about this, he went wild.
I mean, telling me to calm down. This is not her show.
He went into a rage.
Leroy seemed extremely irritated that Kumba was more popular. And Leroy, he didn't generate the same popularity that Kumba did.
Is that a motive for murder? Not having enough fans? Who knows what comprises a motive? People have a reason to kill. It often can be a completely insane reason, but it's a reason.
And then the event that set everything off, and that was the end of Leroy's radio career.
I think we as women need to take the time to empower men more.
Y'all complain about this, you complain about that. So maybe when you up here giving advice?
Leroy went on a rant, using the most degrading terms.
Yeah, you sit there on that mic saying this.
Don said, I had to let him go. I couldn't have this kind of personality on the air and jeopardize everything that Kumba and himself had built up.
So, what is it that you're upset about, Leroy? Is it the fan thing, or is it something else? Let's find out exactly who you are, Leroy, and see what you've been up to in your life. So Perez and Harris pulled a record in criminal history of one Leroy Stutz.
Hey, Mike, come check this out.
And they are floored by what they find.
In 1992, he committed a murder and was convicted in that case and received a sentence of 45 years in prison and served almost 18 years of that sentence.
A 45-year sentence for murder, or for some unknown reason, the parole board releases him. Well, Leroy, you seem like a charming fellow. So, Kumba, what are you doing with this thug? That's the question. There are young women, unfortunately, who are attracted to the bad boys, the wild and free type. The trouble with bad boys is they do bad things.
We don't have enough to get a warrant on this guy to even bring him in and talk to him. Right now, everything is just circumstantial.
Harris and Perez would like to assemble an affidavit in support of an arrest warrant for Leroy Stutz, but they don't have it. And they know they don't. That's the worst position to be in. So what do? You keep looking You keep moving forward. The surveillance tapes show the Buick LeSabre. Harris does a registration check on Buick LeSabres that might be associated with the suit's family, and it turns out Leroy's daughter Latrice is a registered owner of a Buick LeSabre.
We didn't know how we were going to proceed with this. Was Latrice at the scene?
Things have gotten even more interesting.
Shortly after this point, my phone rings and I get a call. And there's a man on the line named Daryl.
Okay.
And he sounds very panicked. Daryl identifies himself as Leroy's cousin. What Daryl said was that very late on July 2nd, he was over at his sister's house, Rhonda's, which is also in Southeast Houston. Next thing, Leroy shows up.
Just listen to me, all right? Because we ain't got time.
Leroy had scratches on his face, and Leroy needs a change of clothes, and he's panicked.
Leroy Stutz has blood on his clothes, and Darrell doesn't like any part of this.
All right, chill. And so Daryl was able to provide Leroy with a new set of clothes, new shoes, but he left a pair of boots.
Well, we'll be right over to see you.
Come on, quick. I don't want nobody seeing.
And you got to keep in mind, there is a intelligence network in the underground who's saying what about whom and who is disloyal to others. They're not interested in helping the police. They're interested in helping the victim.
There's a pair of brown polo boots,
Yeah, looks like blood.
and I noticed there's blood on the boots.
So a remarkable find in terms of evidence to be examined by forensics. Detective Perez now must run forensic tests on a pair of boots that belong to our primary suspect, Leroy Stutz.
Yep, that's positive ID for blood.
With that information, I call Harris back. I said, hey, look, it's blood. He says, all right, I'm going to call the DA.
Harris issues arrest warrants for Leroy Stutz for first-degree murder. But where is he now? Harris wants to talk to Leroy's daughter, Latrice.
The kind of car that Latrice drives, a Buick, is very similar to the car that we see on the video.
What do you have to say about that, Latrice? Harris is an expert interrogator, but Perez has to learn, so he's going to allow Perez to do this. He will oversee it, but Perez will do the questioning.
It's an opportunity to now establish relationships in that interview room and try to get information that is crucial to the case.
Let's talk about your father.
When I was talking to Latrice during the interview, I asked her if she was really close to her dad. She said, no, not at all.
I know what I think, but I want to know
I
what
said,
you think.
he's been away for a long time. Have you tried to get close?
Not really.
So then I asked her, well, do you think he's capable of hurting somebody?
Well, I mean...
She says, well, yeah, he can hurt somebody. I said, well, do you think he may have hurt Kumba? He said, well, they have arguments. Well, what they do behind closed doors is what they do behind closed doors. So she left it at that. So I bring up the Volkswagen.
He asked me to take him to go see.
She says, well, my dad asked me to take him over there. She said he got out of the car and went to the Beetle and then came back to the car and we left. I said, you didn't see him burn the car or anything like that? She's like, no, I didn't see any of that.
She doesn't reveal that she sees him set it on fire, but it's pretty darn good statement. And hats off to Mike to getting somebody who is very hostile, inadvertently, without her even knowing, reveal very damaging information about her father. I think of that old show, Kung Fu, where they have the pebble in the hand, and before you become the master, you got to grab that pebble. Clearly, Mike was ready now to grab that pebble from my hand.
Latrice is evasive and uncooperative, but she finally puts Leroy Stutz in the middle of that VW 1 or 2 moments before it begins to burn. So they actually got from her what they wanted. Therein lies the art of interrogation. Given that information and the footage, Latrice Stutz could be an accessory after the fact to that crime, and she's placed in custody. But our suspect, Leroy Stutz, is still in the wind. In the meantime, Harris and Perez need to start building their case, starting with the motive. What made him kill her? Because right now you don't know. You're convinced you know it's him, and you're probably right about that, but why did he do it? So Harris discovers Latasha White. Kumba and her, they were very good friends, and Harris always wondered why Kumba would associate with a criminal like Leroy Stutz. Latasha White provides an answer to that question in the fact that Leroy Stutz lied to her.
Originally, he told us the reason he went to jail was because he had did a robbery. He did not tell us that he murdered somebody.
Leroy Stutz lied to Kumba, said he'd been in prison, but it was for robbery, and he took the fall for an associate and good friend.
Kumba tells her friend, Leroy's not the guy that I thought he was.
I gotta find a way out from under this dude. For real, for real.
The man told so many lies he couldn't keep up with him.
Kumba, she knew Leroy had been to prison, but in the last few days, she finds out it's not robbery or burglary, it's murder. Well, that's pretty powerful.
And then I keep hearing about all the stuff that happened in jail with him.
Kumba told me, I think he gay. And I was like, what you mean? And she was like, I heard something, I think he gay.
There were rumors in prison.
So you begin to unravel the onion. You pull away one layer after another. Who are you, Leroy? And what pushed your buttons to the point where your girlfriend wound up dead?
We also believe that Leroy's pretty pissed. He didn't like the idea that Kumba was telling people he was sleeping with men. And so he was angry. This was a time bomb ready to explode.
When criminals flee, they go to predictable places. Sometimes they go where their money is, their mama is, or sometimes their main squeeze, who might hide them or help them because no one else will. And true to form,
so you know, I've just got a couple pairs that I want to get.
After a week of searching,
Show me your hands! Back up towards me!
our man Leroy Stutz is seen stepping out of his mother's car at a commercial business.
Leroy Stutz, you are under arrest for the murder of Kumba Sise.
And he's arrested without incident for first-degree murder.
What's over there?
Hi, hey, Leroy. I'm Brian. This is Mike. You did something really, really bad, and you know that I've been doing this game a long time, so I'm not going to waste your time.
You're talking to the wrong person about you, Kumba.
Well, my, Leroy. Had to go see Mom. Now it's your turn to go see a judge.
Leroy, I do believe that you're responsible for Kumba's death. What happened on that weekend of July 4th weekend?
I drew those scratches on your face. Me and my sister was coming in the house in the dark, and I failed to get my face on the stool.
Harris is an expert interrogator, but in the case of Mr. Stutz, Harris identifies him as a sociopath, that he has no emotion. So he decides the best thing to do with him is to go directly at him, to lay out the case that he has against him. And he does so bit by bit.
I want to share some things with you. We have your boots. with the blood on it. How do we explain that? That your DNA is on Kumba's pants and clothing. But let's look at what we have here. We have her car that we found. We have somebody that loves you that admits that they took you to that car. We have your boots. Right? We got video. Okay? What else do we have here? Took a while. We have DNA evidence. We have the vehicle, the video, the clothing, the boots. And I think that kind of sank with him. We had too many people. His own daughter who placed him by that car. We had enough for Leroy Stutes. And look where it leads us. Right to you. Okay? Now, we're here talking to you because you're the only one that killed her. Look up on that board right there. Look at that board. So you can look at that. M-U space D-E-R. Okay? What letter are we missing?
An R.
An R. Right? And you're intelligent enough to look at that saying, man, looks like murder, spells it just like murder, it's just missing one letter, the R, okay? And that's kind of the case that we have on you right now. Looks like murder, spells like murder, everything leads to you, we're just missing one final piece. And you can provide that piece, or we have to allow the narrative of the word and allow a jury, okay, allow a jury to come to this conclusion. A jury can look at that and say, you know what? Even without that R there, I can spell murder. And that's what they're going to look at you as. But the big question is, are we looking at a murder here? And all the facts show us that. The only thing that could change that is this blank. What is your story? Because if your story tells one that you were scared, that you were just upset, whatever it may be, it may not be murder. It could be neg ham, could be criminally negligent. It could be that you go to jail for the murder, but you're able to argue through your defense attorney, self-defense, or whatever it may be. You follow me on that?
Yes, sir. I understand exactly what you're saying.
Okay? Because you were able to figure out what this word meant with a missing letter.
Telling me no matter what, you're gonna fill in the blanks and I'm guilty. That's what you're telling me. You're gonna fill in the blanks.
We're gonna leave it the way it is right there, and we're gonna allow a grand jury, we're gonna allow a jury, we're gonna allow a judge, whatever you choose, to listen to the facts that we have, and they're gonna look and say, is this man credible or all these people credible? And then this evidence. And we haven't lied to you at all about any of this stuff. We've been straight up with you.
I think y'all really know I didn't do this.
Stutes just sits there and looks at it and denies all of it. I didn't do those things. You have to remember that Leroy thinks he's a genius. He thinks he's very clever, and he's covered up all his tracks. He thinks he's smarter than anybody in the room, and he's not as smart as the chair he's sitting in.
We believe that, in the end, the following events took place. It's after 11 o'clock on July 2nd. Kumba meets up with Leroy, and she's at this warehouse, a public place where she can have this breakup.
Will you stop coming over here thinking we're gonna break up?
And she's breaking up with Stutes. She leaves, and I think it's right then and there. She has the argument, and it continues out into the parking lot.
I said, yo, hold up.
No, go home. Stop! Stop! Give me my purse. Quit playing with me.
And I think Stutes grabs her purse, grabs her.
Hey, we ain't done. We ain't done talking. Say we done.
We are done. Go home.
That now you're gonna get now you, stop! Hey, I'm serious. Get in this car.
Stop!
Now.
And he pulls out a pistol.
Leroy, stop!
Now, they have a physical fight.
Leroy, stop!
Why do we know this? Because Stutes in the interview room has scratches above his eye. Her lanyard somehow falls out. and I think he makes her get into the car.
It's too late.
He's holding her at gunpoint. It hits her on the left back side. He stole from the world everything that Kumba could bring to it. It's Kumba who could have done so much with her life.
You get emotional when you kill. You don't think straight. You make 100 mistakes, maybe even 1,000 mistakes. You're going to drag a body in a residential neighborhood. Nobody's ever going to see this person when the sun comes up. Doesn't make any sense, but that's what he does.
And he gets back in the car and he drives over to Rhonda's house. He asks Daryl for a change of clothes, but he messes up. He leaves his polo boots behind. And then at some point in time, he goes to TSU and he drops off the car. Later on, he contacts his daughter. He wants a ride. And she admits that she's at the TSU campus, puts him with the vehicle. And the only thing she doesn't admit to is seeing him actually set it on fire. The car gets torched.
Leroy Stutz goes to trial, pleads not guilty, because, of course, in his mind, he isn't guilty. Someone insulted him. You don't do that, not to him. When the trial is over, the jury finds him guilty unanimously, and he is sentenced to life without parole in the Texas State Penitentiary system, where he remains to this day.
A killer, a murderer, a monster. That's what he is, a monster. I just want to say something to Leroy. I hope he rot in hell. I hope that they don't give him the death penalty. I want him to live with what he has done for the rest of his life and die knowing what he did.
This case really is like so many other domestic violence when the woman finally decides, this is it, I've had enough, I'm gonna move on. That's also the most dangerous time. And at least for Kumba, it was the deadliest time.
If that parole board would have never let that man out, Kumba would probably be on 97.9 right now. When he took her, he took a lot from a lot of people. He took away a sweet person. Like, this girl would, oh my God.
Harris and Perez did not get a confession in this case. Hardly anyone ever does. That's not the point. The point is they conduct a thorough professional investigation resulting in the arrest and conviction of a person responsible for a killing. What a piece of work. The sociopath in action, and results in the tragic loss of a 31-year-old girl who just wanted to live her life and found precisely the wrong person to play with.
The river keeps its secrets. It hums under the bridges at night, a low engine of black water pushing past the pilings, past the graffiti, past the last porch light on the edge of town. Every year it gives something back. A tire, a shopping cart. Once, a rusted bicycle that belonged to a boy who swore he'd ride away and never looked back. But in the fall of 2001, it took something and would not return it, and a headline was born that never stopped echoing in kitchen radios and corner booths. Cold case, missing without a trace, shock to the community, Oregon learns to hold its breath. She left the diner at 9:17 p.m., the kind of timestamp that feels too neat, too sharp to belong to a rainy week. The waitress remembered because the girl folded a napkin into a paper crane and balanced it on the rim of her water glass before she stood. "Who does that?" the waitress said later, her eyes watering under fluorescent lights. "Who makes a crane and leaves it like a forecast?" The name on the slip said Mara, 17, senior year, debating colleges and town lines and whether the bus schedule meant anything at all. She waved at the cook. She pushed the door. The bell sang its cheap bell song. Outside, the rain had taken the city into its soft jaw and pressed down. Last seen in a hooded coat. Last seen under the buzz of a street lamp with a dead moth inside its glass. Last seen with her phone in her hand, a flip model with a charm that clicked against the plastic every time she walked. Police said routine night. Police said no known enemies. Police said call if you saw a girl with green shoelaces and a backpack patched with a band logo that now feels like a prophecy. The band had a song about rivers. The band had a song about running away. Everyone in town hummed the wrong one. Her mother told detectives the family rule: answer texts, don't hitch rides, take the long way if it's lit. Her father stared at the carpet in the living room because it held the imprint of the last time she walked across it in wet socks. A younger brother opened the fridge and closed it and opened it again because grief makes you repeat things until they mean nothing. In the attic, wind ticked the loose vents. In the high school hallway, the trophy case went dim, and then bright, and then dim again, with the faulty ballast like a heartbeat behind glass. Officers traced routes, the river path, the shortcut through the freight yard where the chain-link fence yawns near the pallet stacks, the long bend of Whitlock Road where headlights have to choose between lane and ditch. Patrol cars drifted, slow and heavy, webbed with rain. The night took the tire treads and smudged them into silence. A clipboard filled with columns. Height, weight, last outfit, identifying marks. The words, freckles across nose, looked like confetti thrown at a funeral. By morning, there were posters on telephone poles and talk shows on the kitchen TV and huddles at the grocery checkout. Mystery disappearance, eerie detail, the napkin crane. Neighbors said she was responsible. Teachers said she was bright. Friends said she laughed with her whole face, then blinked mid-sentence as if they had been forced to memorize that one harmless fact to carry through decades. The anchor on the evening news used a voice that made everything sound both inevitable and preventable. In the lower corner of the broadcast, a map of the river pulsed with a red dot, the kind of graphic that sells calm and buys panic. Dive teams went in. The water was a wall, visibility, inches, current, sly. They pulled up sticks, wires, rumors, a pair of sunglasses no one claimed, a tire iron, a chain, a mailbox door like a detached grin, nothing that spelled her name. Nothing that said she made it to the river or away from it or around it. A detective with tired shoulders told the cameras this could take time. He didn't say whose. Then the voicemail, it surfaced like a carp in summer, sudden and shiny and impossible. A message on her best friend's phone, recorded at 9:23 p.m., time stamped and tooth-marked by the tower on North Mill. Static, a breath, what sounded like a truck in low gear. 3 words, maybe 4. The clip played on repeat under the city's skin. Some heard, he's behind me. Some heard, please find me. Some heard, it's fine, leave. You could stand at the edge of the football field and hear parents arguing quietly about syllables while the band tried to keep tempo in the rain. The police sent the file to a lab. The lab said the vowels were mud. The lab said the consonants were ghosts. The lab sent back a spectrogram that looked like weather. After that, the town turned on its heel and started measuring everyone, who worked late, who changed shifts, who washed a truck bed twice in 1 week. Who had a map in the glove box with a corner torn off, the same corner that matched the one found under the overpass near a footprint facing the wrong direction. Rumor became currency. Cashiers said it was the boyfriend, except she didn't have one. Mechanics said it was a drifter, except the highway motels were half empty and tired. Loggers said it was the river, because the river is always guilty, even when it's sleeping. Every night that fall, porch lights stayed on a little longer and curtains fell a little sooner, and everyone learned the soft swear language of dread. A teacher remembered the essay Mara turned in 2 weeks before, a page and a half about trains, about how you never hear the caboose, only the engine and the wind and the rattle in the middle, and then it's gone, and what you remember is the feeling of not knowing how long it would be. The teacher brought the paper to the station and handed it over like a relic. The detective read it at his desk at 2 a.m. with cold coffee and a pencil in his hand and felt something scratching under the floor of this story, something that wanted out. Days stacked up. Leaves clogged drains. The search parties thinned. Thanksgiving arrived with its brittle cheer. Winter came in quiet and built its little glass cities on every windshield, and the poster on the grocery store corkboard sagged under the weight of pushpins and thumbprints. Calendar pages flipped, classmates graduated, the diner changed menus. The waitress with the memory of the paper crane retired and moved in with her sister in Salem, where the air smelled like a different kind of rain. The detective changed partners, and then captains, and then departments, but kept the case file in the bottom right drawer, the one that sticks unless you kneel. 2 decades like a slow siren, anniversary segments on the news, cold case, cold case, cold case, faces older now, voices roughened, the river the same. Then the headline that cracked the glass of time and sent the town back into its old posture, chins up, shoulders tight. Oregon 2001 cold case solved. Solved in letters that don't permit questions. A press conference with a podium and a seal and microphones huddled like birds in winter. The detective, older, no longer the same but carrying the same drawer in his bones, said a new process, a new lab, a new way of listening to an old sound had given them what they never had. A name, a face, a truck with a dent on the driver's side front fender that matched a paint fleck under a street lamp that no one remembered noticing. The cameras watched the room lean forward. The word justice walked in on quiet shoes and tried to sit down. They said the voicemail had been wrong and right at once. They said the low gear you could hear was a particular make, a particular model, a transmission that rolled like a river rock. They said the voice behind the static was a man who had moved away and then back again, twice, because guilt is a migratory bird that loses its map. They said a cousin in Idaho had given a DNA sample in a medical study that had nothing to do with crime, and the network of numbers, the lattice of chance and science, had built a bridge over 24 years in the time it takes to boil water. They said an arrest had been made. They said a courtroom would open. They said answers were coming. But here is what the river says. Under the bridges, under the graffiti, under the last porch light, solved is a word that fits neatly on a chyron and poorly in a chest. The town gathered at the diner under new owners with a different bell on the door and watched the press conference on a mounted TV and waited for a hush that didn't come. People cheered because that is what people do when someone promises an ending. People cried because that is what people do when endings arrive with a limp. A woman in a booth by the window traced a shape on her napkin without looking. It was not a crane. It was a loop, a river bend, a road that doesn't lead out. The detective went home and poured coffee he didn't drink and held the old page-and-a-half essay in his hands and read the part about the unseen caboose. He asked the empty kitchen if sound can lie. He asked the cracked tile if time is a detective with poor vision. He asked the case file if solved means settled, or if solved means only that the door is now shut enough to forget the draft. He pictured Mara's green shoelaces, bright as new leaves, bright as traffic lights, bright as a thing that refuses to dull with the years. He pictured the street lamp with the dead moth, the soft rain, the last text sent and not delivered. He heard the voicemail again, the vowels like mud, the consonants like ghosts, and underneath, as clear as a held breath, that low engine hum. Community shock lingers in slow motion. Neighbors still look twice at truck beds. Parents still drive the long route and leave the porch lights on, a ritual old as fear. The old rumors have gone quiet, but silence is not agreement. Silence is a bruise. In the attic of Mara's childhood home, wind ticks the new vents because someone finally fixed them, but the sound is the same. Downstairs, the carpet still holds the memory of wet socks. On the fridge, a photo fades at the corners and holds in the middle, stubborn as the river's current. The town's newscaster speaks in present tense even when the words wear past like a coat. Cold case solved, she says, and the graphic glows. But the camera catches the eyes of a mother who has learned the unteachable lesson. What the law closes, the heart reopens every morning. So at night, the river keeps doing what it does. It hums and carries and hides and hoards, and sometimes, rarely, it hands something back. A watch, a chain, a story that eroded down to its hardest stones. From the bridge, you can swear you hear that engine, low and steady, towing a sound the lab could not measure. You can swear you see a girl in a hooded coat under a lamp that captures every raindrop in the world and makes it look like proof. You can swear that solved is just another word for almost, and almost is the shape that grief makes when it's tired of being polite. And if you listen long enough, the river will tell you, in the only language it knows, why the headline will never quite stop echoing, because in this town, in this year, under this sky, a napkin crane once balanced on a glass and never learned to fly. Start where the light shakes. A bulb over the station's back entrance flickers like a nervous eye as the detective steps outside with the old file hugged to his ribs. Night tastes metallic, wet metal, wet leaves, a hint of diesel drifting from the repair yard 2 blocks over. He stands there long enough to feel the past line up behind him like a silent squad. He could turn and find the same map he pinned to the corkboard in 2001, the same red twine, the same dotted line that stops at a river and pretends that's an answer. He doesn't turn. He can hear the voicemail in his skull, not as sound, but as shape. 3, maybe 4 words, a low gear, that hum. Inside, fluorescent hum takes over. The lab liaison waits with a tablet, eyes bright, caffeine bright, the kind of bright that only happens when someone has data and wants to say it in one breath. New method, she says, no fanfare, just urgency. New filtering on legacy audio, adaptive noise modeling, source separation that can peel a whisper away from a truck a street away. He nods like he understands. He only understands the part where something old becomes something legible. She places a pair of headphones on the desk as if they are delicate or holy. He sits. He presses play, rain first, digitized into static, then the engine note like an animal crouched low, then the words in a tiny, trembling pocket of silence. Not behind me, not please find me, not it's fine, leave. The voice, young and sure, says, lights out early. He leans back, he knows that phrase, he knows the neighborhood slang from 2 decades of interviews, not power outage, not a threat. A simple, irritated observation teenagers used for the street lamp under the overpass that never lasted long after repairs. Lights out early, as if someone unscrewed the night by hand. The detective closes his eyes and sees the map unroll itself to a single bulb in a single rusted casing with a moth fossilized inside. A known thing, a fixed point. He can draw a radius around a phrase and watch the world tighten. The lab liaison is still talking. Voice print profiling narrowed the accent range. Vowel rounding suggests local west of the river, raised within a 10-mile loop. Breath cadence indicates exertion, quick walking, not running. Background Chihuahua at the 15-second mark, a bark so tiny you miss it without the software that hears ghosts. The detective notes it down. Chihuahua near the overpass. How many households on Whitlock keep a dog that small in a yard that big? He can count them on 2 hands, maybe 1. Somewhere in the stacks of notes there's a line. Neighbor mentions yappy dog. He can see the letter Y as he wrote it. He remembers his partner then, a woman with an ink-stained thumb, who used to draw small boxes next to each roomer, empty boxes. He wonders which of those boxes should have been checked. Back to the name, back to the transmission. The new text says it clean. A low gear that sings in a key only one model from one specific year carries. A 1999 half-ton with a manual 5-speed and a chip in the bell housing that adds a warble on the downshift. Add a dent on the driver's side fender. Add flecks of paint found under the lamp in 2001, capped and filed and almost forgotten. Add the man who owns a vehicle that matches all of it. A man who left town in 2002 and came back in 2009, then left again and returned last year like tidewater pretending it has free will. The name tastes familiar, like a coin you held too long. He says it out loud. The room goes still in a way rooms do when a name pulls gravity across the floor. Don't jump, the captain warns, but the captain is already leaning in. They pull the records, traffic stops, employment history, a cluster of pay stubs from the freight yard, night shifts, a change in shifts the week she vanished, a note from a supervisor who didn't like eye contact, scribbled and blunt. Good at heavy lifts, keeps to himself. Truck with a dent I told him to fix because the clients see it when they pull in. The detective writes dent again, lowercase, slow. He feels the night widen. They visit the yard at noon because surprise has more flavor in daylight. Men in hard hats move like a school of fish around forklifts. The foreman has a coffee tattooed on his temper, a permanent frown from sun and paperwork. The name lands on his desk. He blinks once. He says he came back last year, sure, short stints, odd hours, doesn't chat. Worked nights until the end of summer, switched to days in September. No complaints, no fights, nothing to put in ink. The foreman shrugs as if ordinary is a kind of crime. The detective asks about trucks. Company trucks? Personal? The foreman points with his chin. Out back, against the chain link, a row of personal vehicles doze. 2 sedans, a puddle of oil posing as a third, and a pickup with a pale scar across the fender like a healed wound that never learned discretion. Wind kicks grit. The detective walks it slow. He doesn't touch. He looks. Dull gray, paint once bright, the curve of the dent cradling a spray of newer paint where someone tried to make time pretend it hadn't passed. He takes out his phone and photographs without art, only angles. The captain hums approval behind him like a bass line. They ask to speak with him. The foreman sends a runner. The runner nods too quickly and vanishes into the warehouse. He appears in the bay door like he grew there, mid-40s now. That slow, centered way some men carry their size when they learned young that sudden movements look like intent. Ball cap, beard trimmed to indifference, eyes that slide and then hold if held. His hands swallow the folded cap as he steps into the sun. The detective recognizes a time-lapse version of the DMV photo he once taped to a case file corner, the one he jabbed a thumb at in the rotten winter of 2002 when nothing would budge. He feels the case turn in its sleep. They do the polite dance. You mind answering a few questions? Here's my card. We're reviewing some old things. He nods like a man in a store asked if he needs a bag. He sits on the low wall by the pallets. The detective keeps the river out of his voice. Do you still drive the same truck you had back in '01? He shrugs. Same model, not the same truck. That one died. This one's newer, which is to say, less dead. Why? Routine. The detective lifts a brow at the dent. He smiles. Small. Parking lot while backing up. A post leapt out. Happens. The detective hears a chihuahua bark from somewhere behind the fence. The man's eyes flick. The detective notes direction without looking. He remembers the audio liaison's finger tapping the spectrogram when that tiny bark glinted. Where were you the night she vanished? That question should be formal, should be softened by calendar math. He doesn't soften it. The man purses his mouth into a non-answer. Work, probably. He names the yard. The foreman shakes his head, almost imperceptible. The detective watches the almost more than the head. Did you know her? Small town. Everyone knows everyone. That's a non-answer, too. He tries a thread. The street lamp under the overpass goes out at all the worst times, right? Lights out early. He says it like weather. The man's eyes do a narrow trick and come back. He says nothing. His silence has a shape the detective recognizes from 100 interviews. A pocket, not empty, not full, just deep. They don't arrest him in sunlight. This isn't a movie. They collect, they compare, search warrants live where patience lives. The lab pushes the voicemail through another tissue-thin sieve and returns a gift, a scrape within the hum, a pattern of road grit pinging a wheel well that matches the gravel mix used in the south lot of the freight yard in 2001. It sounds absurd, hyper-specific, impossible. It becomes another one of those small stones in the pocket that change the weight of the coat. Add the bell housing chip. Add the radius around the phrase. Add a cousin in Idaho whose medical study opened a window at 3 a.m. last winter and let a breeze blow directly on this file. Genetic genealogy does not feel like magic to the detective. It feels like somebody finally turned on a lamp in a room he'd memorized in the dark. A tree of numbers grows on the monitor. Branches label themselves with people who always thought they'd be footnotes. Second cousin, great aunt. A pair of siblings who share a grandfather with the man whose truck hums in the key of now. A cross-check with the DMV narrows to 3 male relatives alive and of the right age in 2001. 2 live out of state and have alibis that breathe. 1 lives here, works here, fixes a dent with the kind of care a man uses when he thinks a fresh layer hides old bones. The detective takes the long way home that night, out past the football field, past the diner with its new bell, down Whitlock where the road chooses ditch or lane, over the overpass that holds the street lamp like a withered tooth. He parks just beyond and kills the engine. For a minute there's only river and wind and the soft tick-tick of cooling metal. Then a chihuahua barks from a yard crusted with toys and tools. He smiles at nothing. He lets the quiet stack. The town notices the unmarked cars. Towns always do. The gossip muscle flexes. Shock culture is a reflex. The morning radio show blinks awake and asks questions with raised eyebrows the hosts pretend are just voices. Remember the crane. Remember the shoes. Remember the voicemail. A woman at the grocery whispers the suspect's last name like it might explode in her mouth. The pastor at the church off Mill prays in broader strokes than usual, repeating the phrase patience in the space between promises. The newscaster stands by the river, coat flapping, and does the thing where she looks back over her shoulder while telling the camera, developing details, as if the river might reach up and provide a quote. And yet there are flats of normal, kids kicking a ball through a puddle deep enough to write their names in, a teenager practicing parallel parking with his mother's jaw clenched to dust, a man repairing a porch step because winters are excuses and springs are liars. The detective watches the town continue and understands why solved and settled are strangers. He thinks about the mother who learned to make coffee without looking at the clock because time stopped being measurement and became a fog. He thinks about the younger brother opening and closing the fridge until the hinge softened. He thinks about the essay on trains. He lets the words sit beside him in the car and steer for a mile. The warrant lands. It has a thud weight when it arrives, an authority that tastes like dry paper and old ink. Dawn raid would be theatrics. They don't need theatrics. They need clean lines. They pull the truck. They pull clothing, boots, floor mats, a keychain charm shaped like a fishhook that catches on the detective's glove and hangs there as if making a point. They swab without speeches. They bag and seal. The man watches from the porch as if it's a demonstration at a fair. He offers nothing. He requests a lawyer without drama. He goes inside and shuts the door with a courtesy that makes one of the younger officers snort, then blush, then go quiet. Lab again. Not hours, not days. Time compresses around phrases like probable cause and custody chain. They are careful. They've learned how a small error becomes a years-long echo. The call comes at dusk, just as the river decides the day is finished. Partial match, the liaison says, not from the truck, not from the boots, from the underside of the seat where a vacuum never reaches. Trace skin cells, degraded, but enough to lean, not to fall. And in the bucket under the porch, a coil of rope with a microscopic underscore, a single flake of green dye that says shoelaces twice. The detective does not breathe for a count of 10. He sets the phone down, face up, as if it could roll away. They do not declare triumph. They build a bridge, plank by plank, with every piece of dull evidence finally willing to bear weight. A paint fleck under a dead moth. A phrase said into rain. A dog's bark. A transmission song. A dent that never healed right. A rope in a bucket. A cousin who gave a vial to strangers and unknowingly wrote a return address on a ghost. The captain signs what needs signing. The DA runs a forefinger down a list, taps twice, nods. Paperwork equips itself into something with teeth. The arrest is simple. No chase, no cuffs displayed like trophies. He leaves the yard at shift's end and they step into his path with the kind of quiet that sets everyone else at the fence but keeps voices down. The detective says the name he's been carrying like a coin. The man doesn't flinch. He looks to the side, toward the overpass he cannot see from here, toward the street lamp that once failed on a night that rearranged a town. He says nothing. He lets himself be guided. A large man who decided not to decide. The foreman swears once under his breath and someone drops a wrench and the sound is unreasonably loud. News peels off its coat. Sirens pretend restraint. The station conference room fills with microphones huddled like a flock again. The detective stands at the podium and sees year after year layered like acetate, his younger face in the glass of the doors, the case file bottom right drawer that used to stick, the teacher with the train essay paper holded to hope, the mother with the photo that holds in the middle while its corners fade. He wants to speak in headlines because the town taught him that cadence, but he chooses the grammar of care. He says the arrest is a step. He says the charge will be announced by the DA. He says they never stopped. He says thank you, and the word feels both too small and correct. That night, porch lights burn like a stitched constellation across the west side. The river does its whisper work. In the attic, someone opens a box and finds a spare bulb for a lamp that doesn't exist anymore. In a yard near Whitlock, a chihuahua finally sleeps. In a cell, a man leans his head against cool cinder block and listens, perhaps for a truck he no longer drives, perhaps for an engine note that told on him across 24 years. The detective waits in his car outside the precinct because the past refuses to let him be inside something. He takes the essay out and reads it again, the part about how you don't hear the caboose. You just feel awake in the air. You just stand in the dark and count without numbers. Lights out early, that's what she said, young and irritated, because the world had the nerve to flicker before she was finished with it. The detective writes the phrase on the margin in fresh ink and circles it once, then twice, then not again. He can feel the town's heart leaning toward a courtroom it hasn't seen yet. He can feel the bend in the river where everything lost wants to gather but can't. He can feel the way solved keeps tapping on the window while mystery lies down on the floor like a tired dog and waits to see if anyone will say its name. He knows tomorrow will start with headlines and end with someone in line at the pharmacy saying they remember the crane and the bell and the rain, and in the middle there will be a rhythm like breath returning to a chest that forgot how. He starts the engine. A low hum answers him, not the same key, not the same year, just an ordinary car telling him he still has miles. He pulls onto Whitlock and drives under the overpass where the street lamp is finally steady, a clean circle of light on wet asphalt, a halo that came too late and somehow still matters. He looks up at the bulb and thinks about maintenance schedules and city budgets and the strange arithmetic of fate. Then he laughs once, quietly, because the sound is small and human and it belongs to no spectrogram. Then he drives toward morning. The courthouse does not creak when it fills, it groans. Marble has a way of amplifying shoes, whispers, coughs that belong to people pretending they are not holding their breath. Oregon mornings arrive gray and unhurried, but the line outside the courthouse starts before sunrise. News vans setting up like metal flowers, cables spilling across the sidewalk, tripods stretching thin shadows against the steps. The air smells of rain on stone and ink on notepads. Cameras adjust lenses. Reporters test their voices. Cold case, they repeat. Solved, arrest, arraignment, each syllable hammered like nails into a coffin the town has been building for 24 years. Inside, the defendant walks in with the stillness of someone who rehearsed every muscle. Hands cuffed, eyes steady, jaw locked against whatever words might try to crawl out. He doesn't glance toward the gallery. He doesn't look at the family on the front bench. The mother sits with her hands folded so tightly that her knuckles glow. The brother, older now, hairline pulled back by years, leans forward, elbows on knees, face carved into something harder than teenage grief. The detective sits 3 rows back, not with the family, not with the press, but in that middle zone where the past and present can overlap without colliding. He keeps the essay in his jacket pocket like a talisman, like an anchor that knows where the bottom is. The judge reads the charges in a voice designed to crush adjectives: kidnapping, homicide, obstruction, concealment. The defendant blinks once, twice, as if timing himself to the rhythm of accusation. His lawyer mutters, objecting to phrasing, to process, to presentation. None of it lands. The DA reads out the evidence like a ledger: voicemail with identifiable phrase, paint fleck, dent match, audio signature, chihuahua bark, genetic genealogy links, trace evidence from under a truck seat, rope with dyed fiber. Each piece lands dull and sharp at once, a slow rain of nails. The gallery shifts, murmurs. The bailiff clears his throat and silence clamps down again. And then the mother speaks. Not testimony, not yet. A statement requested by no one, permitted by the judge's small nod. Her voice is a blade softened by rust. She tells the room about the last night she heard her daughter's door close. She tells them about the wet socks, the fridge opening, the attic vents ticking. She tells them about every porch light she left on, every grocery poster she replaced when the ink faded. She doesn't name the defendant. She doesn't have to. She says only, solved is not the same as alive. Her words drop into the marble like stones, and the gallery holds its breath until they settle. The defense strategy unfolds like damp paper. No body recovered. Circumstantial lattice work. Witnesses with blurred memories. Science prone to interpretation. They want to cut each thread until the web looks fragile. But the prosecution knows the trick of weight. 1 thread stretches. 10 threads cut skin. 24 years of threads, knotted and frayed, weave into something that pulls even when the weave is ugly. The DA leans on the science with careful hands, explaining to a jury how audio can preserve truth better than human recall, how a dog's bark in static is not coincidence, how DNA is not belief but math. The jurors nod in uneven rhythm, some skeptical, some convinced, some unreadable. The detective watches their eyes and knows trials are not about evidence alone. They are about stories. And this story has been told for 2 decades in every kitchen, every classroom, every diner booth. Everyone in the county grew up with it. They are characters in it whether they admit it or not. The press eats details. Headlines split by noon. Mother confronts accused in court. New forensic audio cracks 2001 mystery. Genetic genealogy delivers justice in Oregon. Each headline sells certainty, but certainty is a costume. The town wears it uncomfortably. At the diner, new owners pour coffee and customers argue over the phrase again. Lights out early. Some insist it was coincidence. Some claim it proves she was steps from the overpass. Some whisper it was code, something planned. The napkin crane resurfaces in conversation, paper folded into rumor. Memory distorts. The waitress who once remembered has been gone for years, but her story grows taller, retold by people who never saw her face, a crane on the glass, a prophecy, a farewell, a challenge. Truth thins every time it's spoken. Meanwhile, the detective walks the riverbanks at dusk, ritual more than search. He knows nothing waits for him here, no body, no object, no revelation. But he comes because the river was the first suspect, the first witness, the first jury. He listens to the hum under the bridges, the slip of water around pilings, the quiet grip of current that could hide anything. He tries to imagine her voice here, 17, irritated at a lamp, not scared, not whispering, just noting the dark like a teenager does. He feels his chest tighten at the ordinariness of it. How much horror was born from such a casual remark? He thinks about how many times he himself has cursed a dead streetlight, never knowing that phrase could outlive a life. Back in court, the defense calls character witnesses, old co-workers who shrug, an ex who says he was quiet, sometimes angry, never violent, a landlord who remembers late rent, but not much else. The jury listens, but their faces betray fatigue. The prosecution counters with timelines, with maps, with the sequence of shifts at the freight yard, a line from a supervisor's old note, dent on fender, clients see it. The jurors glance at one another. Small details begin to loom. The rope with green fibers becomes more than a rope. The essay about trains becomes more than homework. The detective testifies briefly, voice clipped, eyes steady. He repeats the phrase, "We never closed the drawer." He doesn't mention the nights he sat with coffee until dawn. He doesn't mention the fridge opening and closing in memory. He only offers facts. But facts sweat emotion when carried this long. The town grows restless. On corners and porches, people ask each other what justice means this late. A verdict will not resurrect. A sentence will not refill the empty chair at the table. Yet something inside demands closure, as if closure is a currency and they have all paid too much without receiving it. At night, teenagers drive under the overpass to test themselves against the dark, headlights washing the steady lamp that no longer flickers. Some roll down windows, whispering "lights out early," like a dare, like a spell, like they want to hold the ghost in their mouths. Fear and fascination braid together until no one can tell them apart. The detective dreams of trains, engines, boxcars, cabooses that never appear. He wakes with the essay folded in his hand. He thinks about the jury, about the weight of headlines, about the way solved feels hollow when spoken in empty kitchens. He knows the trial is not the end. It is another version of the river, another current, another hum. He looks at the file drawer in his memory and wonders if this time, finally, it will close without sticking, or if it will always catch, no matter how hard he pushes. Tomorrow the courtroom will echo again. Tomorrow the DA will place more threads on the table. Tomorrow the jury will count the knots. But tonight, the river keeps its secrets, the porch lights burn, and the town rehearses the word guilty in their heads, afraid to say it out loud, afraid not to. Because in Oregon, in 2001, a lamp went dark too early, and nothing has ever truly lit since. The air inside the courthouse feels heavier now, as if each day of testimony thickens the walls, traps the echoes of words that refuse to dissolve. Jurors enter with their notebooks pressed to their chests, lines of fatigue under their eyes. They have been carrying a ghost as long as the town has, and every phrase repeated in this chamber makes the ghost louder. Outside, the square is a circus, vans with logos, microphones on sticks, commentators rehearsing sound bites. The headline feeds itself, Oregon 2001 cold case solved, and the solved is always shouted, always bold, but the weight of it in the courtroom is brittle, it rattles like glass. The prosecution builds its scaffolding with precision. They call the audio experts, who step forward with spectrograms glowing like weather maps. The jury leans in as the expert points to the tiny streaks of light across black fields, explains how a bark becomes a fingerprint, how a gear shift hums in a register no human ear catches, how a voice pushed through static can be slowed, stripped, rebuilt, until it yields its simple, irritated phrase. Lights out early. The words hang above the jurors' heads. Some write it down, some just stare. The defense tries to cut through, calling it interpretation, science fiction. But interpretation doesn't leave green dye on a rope. Interpretation doesn't dent a fender in the same shape as a paint fleck found under a street lamp 24 years ago. Each protest sounds thinner than the last. And then comes the genealogy. The liaison from the lab explains the map of family, how a cousin's voluntary sample stitched a thread that wound its way back to Oregon. A tree built not by memory, but by math, branches labeled with lives that never knew they were connected to this courtroom, to this river town. The jurors exchange glances, uneasy at the idea that a blood test taken for health could ripple into handcuffs on a man across the country. The defense pounces, cries invasion, overreach, but the judge allows it. The jury scribbles, the DA steadies his voice, and the town's eyes widen as the abstract science becomes a noose of probability tightening around the defendant's neck. The mother sits stiff, unmoved, her face stone. She has heard every phrase, every piece of science, every fragment of rope turned into prophecy. She does not flinch when they display the backpack patch, when they replay the voicemail. Her brother shifts restlessly beside her, jaw clenched, a man built of years without answers, now confronted with too many. He watches the defendant without blinking. The detective, 3 rows back, feels the weight of that stare and knows that no verdict can make the stare disappear. Justice isn't anesthetic. It does not numb. It cuts and calls it closure. The defense brings its own witness, a psychologist who talks about memory decay, contamination, suggestion, how the town repeated the Crane story until it became scripture, how the phrase "lights out early" could be a trick of ears desperate for meaning. He says trauma builds myths. He says witnesses rewrite their own pasts. The jury listens, some nodding, some frowning. The DA counters with data, with timestamps, with maps. Memory may rot, he says, but records do not. The phrase existed before the myth. The tape was there before the story. Trauma did not invent the hum of that truck. The court murmurs approval, a soft current of relief. The defense frowns. The defendant remains stone. Outside, the town splits. At the diner, voices rise. Some say the trial is solid, inevitable. Others whisper frame job, scapegoat, government tricks. Rumor breeds in old soil. Every time the press airs the voicemail clip, debate ignites anew. He's behind me, some still insist. Please find me. It's fine, leave. The jury knows this noise is out there, swirling, but inside the courthouse the words are narrowed down to a single, sharp blade, lights out early. They have to decide if that blade cuts truth or coincidence. The detective dreams again, this time not of trains, but of the fridge door, opening, closing, the hinge creaking. Inside, nothing. The brother's face, years younger, repeating the ritual as though if he searched enough times, the missing would return. He wakes at his kitchen table, the essay still under his hand. He wonders what Mara would have written had she been given one more year. He wonders if the phrase about trains was her way of warning the future that you don't always get to see the end, only feel the absence. He thinks of the jury, ordinary people pulled into extraordinary weight, trying to read spectrograms and rope fibers and ghosts of voices and static. He envies their temporary burden. They will set it down at verdict. He never will. The town begins to anticipate the climax. Porch lights stay on longer, as though waiting for a signal. Teenagers whisper the phrase into their phones, uploading clips, playing detective in bedrooms with glow-in-the-dark posters. The case has become folklore, and folklore doesn't care about verdicts. Folklore feeds on mystery, and mystery survives even when gavel falls. The detective knows this, feels it in the slow pull of the river, in the hush of the courthouse halls at night. Solved doesn't mean silent. Solved just means the story gets a new headline. In court, the DA ends the day with the rope. He holds it up in a sealed bag, coils dull, fibers frayed. He explains the green flake, the dye that speaks of shoelaces, the microscopic echo of a girl last seen with bright laces tied in double knots. The jurors lean in as if the rope hums, as if they can hear it. The defense objects, the judge overrules. The rope is set down, bagged, silent, but its shadow stretches across the room. The detective closes his eyes. He hears the train again, the essay's words pulling him back. You never hear the caboose. You just feel the air shift when it's gone. The trial adjourns for the day, but the hum does not stop. Reporters rush to cameras, townsfolk gather in knots. The mother walks out without a word. The defendant is led away, stone-faced. His silence a second trial the jury must weigh. And above it all, the courthouse lights flicker once, twice before holding steady, as if to remind everyone inside why they are here. Why the phrase spoken in static still claws at the town's throat. Because lights out early, and nothing has been the same since. The rain fell hard the morning the cross-examination began, as though the sky wanted to wash the courthouse clean before anyone spoke. Water hammered gutters, pooled at curbs, soaked shoes and umbrellas, and the cameras set up outside. The courthouse steps shone like wet stone teeth. Reporters huddled under tarps, their voices sharper against the hiss of rain, pushing the same words again and again. 24 years, cold case, solved, arraignment. Inside, the gallery buzzed low, a hum that carried grief and anticipation in equal measure. Every cough, every shuffle of paper echoed too loud, as if the building itself strained to hear what was coming. The defense attorney rose first, crisp suit, eyes like sharpened glass. He walked toward the audio expert and let the silence stretch before he spoke. Static is not evidence, he said finally, voice calm, clipped. He replayed the voicemail through the courtroom speakers, the hiss, the hum, the bark faint in the distance, the phrase some swore they heard and others swore they didn't. He paced while it played, head tilted, letting the jury soak in the confusion. Then he turned. You're telling this court that these sounds, muddy, distorted, 2 decades old, can convict a man of murder? The expert answered steadily, but the seed of doubt had been planted. Jurors shifted, some scribbled, some stared at their hands. Next came the rope. The defense attacked the chain of custody, questioned the years it sat in evidence boxes, the hands that handled it, the dust it collected. They asked if fibers degrade, if dye fades, if contamination sneaks in. The expert spoke of seals, of logs, of microscopes, but the jury looked uneasy. The defense attorney pressed harder, voice rising just enough to sound like righteous anger. We are to believe a single green fleck, invisible to the human eye, is enough to decide life or death. He left the question hanging in the air like smoke. The defendant sat motionless throughout, eyes forward, body still, like a man carved from stone. He neither smiled nor frowned, never shook his head, never whispered to his lawyer. His silence was its own performance. Some in the gallery saw guilt in it, others saw endurance. The mother saw nothing. She stared at the floor, hands folded, unmoving. The brother, jaw clenched, leaned so far forward it looked as though he might stand and speak out of turn. The detective, 3 rows back, felt the tension coil like wire inside his chest. He knew the defense's rhythm, the steady hammering of doubt, and he also knew juries listened to doubt louder than to certainty. Then came the surprise witness. The defense called an old coworker from the freight yard, a man with weathered skin and restless hands. He claimed he saw the defendant at work the night Mara vanished, claimed the shift log was wrong, claimed he remembered because of a storm and a machine breakdown that night. The prosecution objected, but the judge allowed it. The coworker spoke quickly, eyes darting, but his story had cracks. The DA asked for specifics. What time, what task, who else was there? The man faltered, hesitated, contradicted himself. The jury noticed. His testimony, meant to shield, began to crumble under the weight of detail. Still, the seed was planted. Maybe, just maybe, the defendant was somewhere else. Outside the courthouse, the rain slowed to a mist, and the town whispered. At the diner, someone swore they remembered that storm. Others insisted it never happened. The Crane story surfaced again, paper folded on glass, retold until it became gospel. Teenagers on social media argued over the voicemail clip, looping it, slowing it, captioning it. He's behind me. Please find me. Lights out early. The town fractured along the lines of interpretation, each group convinced their version was truth. Folklore tightened its grip, louder than the law. In the courtroom, the DA countered with patience. He walked the jury through the evidence again, slow, deliberate, every thread woven back together. Paint fleck, dent, genealogy, rope, bark, the voicemail. He built the lattice again, plank by plank, until it looked less like a web of coincidences and more like a wall. His voice never rose. He let the evidence speak. He ended with the phrase itself, lights out early, written in bold letters across a projection screen. She was not whispering for help, he said. She was not inventing code. She was describing what she saw, a lamp that had gone dark, and standing beneath it, he paused, turned toward the defendant, was the man who brought her there. The gallery shivered, the jurors leaned back. The defense objected, but the words were already in the room, already stitched into the air. The mother lifted her head, eyes glassy, not toward the DA, not toward the jury, but toward the ceiling, as though searching for her daughter's voice in the rafters. The brother closed his eyes. The detective gripped the edge of the bench until his knuckles went white. He felt the hum of the river in his bones, the same hum from the night she vanished, the same hum that had carried him here after decades of silence. Court adjourned in heavy quiet. Outside, the rain stopped. The square gleamed under weak sun, the courthouse steps steaming. Reporters shouted, cameras rolled, headlines prepared themselves. But the town itself moved slower. People walked with shoulders hunched, eyes down, voices low. The word solved tasted strange now, half victory, half wound. Solved didn't erase the paper crane, or the wet socks, or the fridge door, or the attic vents ticking in the night. Solved didn't change the river's hum. And as the courthouse lights flickered once more, a brief stutter before steadying, the phrase echoed again, louder than any gavel, any headline, any verdict to come. Lights out early, always early. The sixth day of trial begins under a sky the color of steel, the kind of sky that makes the river look heavier, slower, as if it is holding its secrets closer to its chest. The courthouse looms against that backdrop, and the square is already crowded. Reporters murmur into microphones. Townsfolk gather on benches, some holding umbrellas, though no rain has fallen yet. Anticipation feels like pressure in the air, like the storm hasn't broken, but everyone swears they can hear it. Inside, the benches creak under the weight of bodies, and the gallery fills with the smell of wet coats, coffee, and nervousness. The defendant enters, chained, his silence sharp as ever. He sits without looking anywhere except forward. The mother does not look at him. She hasn't since the first day. The brother does, though. His stare is so pointed it feels like it could cut through the air between them. The detective sits in his usual place, hands folded over the essay in his jacket pocket, eyes tired but steady. He has learned not to expect release. He has learned trials stretch longer than memory can endure. The DA begins with a map, a simple projection, the streets of town, the river bending like a scar. He circles the overpass, the broken lamp, the freight yard, the house with the chihuahua barking in the background of the voicemail. Each point connected with a thin red line, a web that tightens with every word. He speaks slowly, but each syllable lands like a hammer. The jurors follow with their eyes. Some nod, some chew pens, some avoid looking at the defendant. The defense objects to the dramatics, but the judge lets the map stand. Then the testimony shifts. A forensic specialist takes the stand. She describes the green fleck found in the rope fibers. She shows the jury magnified images, tiny shards of dye glowing neon against darkness. She explains how the chemical signature matches the dye used in shoelaces manufactured in 2000, the same year Mara bought hers. She doesn't embellish. She doesn't need to. Facts spoken simply sometimes cut deepest. The mother closes her eyes as if she can see her daughter tying those laces again. The brother exhales loudly through his nose, jaw locked. The jurors lean forward. The defense rises. Sharp. They question degradation. They question handling. They question whether anyone in the world could own green shoelaces. But the prosecution counters. The combination of dye match, location, and trace DNA under the truck seat is not coincidence. Threads that might fray on their own hold when knotted together. The courtroom shifts as if the argument itself carries weight. The DA calls the detective. He walks to the stand, shoulders heavy, voice clipped. He recounts the night in 2001, the rain, the posters, the dive teams pulling up junk from the river. He explains the voicemail, the way the words refuse to die, the decades of dead ends. He says, "We never closed the drawer," and the courtroom stills. He does not say the fridge door. He does not say the essay. Those are private ghosts. He speaks only of facts. But facts spoken after 24 years tremble with the residue of grief. The jury hears it. So does the defendant, though his face never changes. Cross-examination hits harder. The defense drills into failures. Why wasn't the truck seized in 2001? Why wasn't the rope tested then? Why did the case go cold? The detective answers evenly, but each question reminds the jury that time corrodes. The defense paints a picture of police fumbling, of evidence rotting in boxes, of a town so desperate for answers it grabbed the nearest suspect. They say cold cases are built on longing, not certainty. Some jurors nod. The detective feels the rope tighten around the room. He grips the edge of the witness stand until his knuckles ache. Outside, the town fractures again. In the diner, voices rise over the hiss of a coffee pot. Some swear guilt is obvious. Others mutter about scapegoats. Teenagers play the voicemail on their phones, slowing it down, arguing over syllables. Lights out early has become a chant, a meme, a superstition. They whisper it on the football field, under the overpass, daring each other to stand in the dark. Fear and fascination twist together until they look the same. In the courthouse, the DA regains the floor. He plays the voicemail again, but this time slowed by technology, filtered, sharpened. Static fades. The hum remains. The bark punctuates. The phrase comes clear, irritated, ordinary. Lights out early. The jurors' eyes widen, some whispering to themselves. The defense objects, calls it manipulation, but the judge allows it. For the first time, the courtroom itself seems to believe the words. The mother stares straight ahead. A tear slips, silent, down her cheek. The brother's fists tighten. The detective closes his eyes, hearing the river hum inside the sound, the same hum that has followed him for 2 decades. The defendant sits stone still, but his throat moves once, a swallow too visible, a human crack in the stone mask. The jury sees it. The gallery feels it. Silence swallows the room. Court adjourns. Outside, the sky finally breaks. Rain lashes the square, sending umbrellas spinning, cameras scrambling, voices shouting over thunder. Headlines form instantly. Jury hears chilling voicemail in Oregon cold case trial. Tears in courtroom as evidence resurfaces. The town whispers beneath the storm. Porch lights glow brighter against the gray. In the attic, vents tick. On the river, the water swells, restless. And the phrase lingers, more haunting now than ever, written across the storm itself. Lights out early, too early, always early. The courthouse on the 7th day holds the kind of silence that hums louder than sound. The storm has passed, leaving puddles like shattered mirrors on the courthouse steps. Reporters stand in them, shoes wet, voices sharp, repeating the same words that no longer feel like news, but incantation. Cold case, solved, trial, 24 years. Inside, the air is thick with expectation. The gallery fills early. Every cough, every scrape of a chair, every whisper stretches longer than it should, as if the building itself is waiting. The prosecution begins with the timeline. The DA lays it out hour by hour, minute by minute, using old shift logs, phone records, scraps of receipts. Mara at the diner at 9:17 p.m., the voicemail at 9:23, the defendant clocking out at 8:47, a gap of 30 minutes in which the world can collapse. The map reappears, red lines tracing routes, diner to overpass, overpass to freight yard to river. He walks the jury through the silence between each timestamp, the blank spaces where memory failed but paper did not. The jurors lean forward, pens scribbling. The defense objects to speculation, but the map stays glowing on the screen. And then the voicemail plays again, not slowed this time, not filtered, raw, static crackling, engine hum low, bark sharp, voice clear enough to stir something in every chest. Lights out early. The DA does not add commentary. He lets the sound live in the air. The jurors glance at each other. Some press lips tight. Some tilt their heads as though listening harder could summon more words. The mother grips the edge of the bench so tightly her knuckles bleach white. The brother stares at the defendant, unblinking, jaw rigid. The defendant keeps his eyes forward, but his fingers twitch once, a small betrayal. The detective sees it. Everyone sees it. The defense rises fast, voice sharp, slicing at the moment. Interpretation, subjective. 24 years of static dressed up as science. They pace the floor, throwing questions at the audio expert. Could it be misheard? Could it be noise? Could it be anything at all? The expert answers calmly, but the attack is relentless. The jurors watch, their eyes caught between doubt and belief. The defense ends with a jab. If the lamp was out, how could she see who was there? Silence follows. The question lingers, poisonous. The DA doesn't flinch. He answers with evidence. He projects photos of the lamp casing, corroded, moth-trapped behind glass. City maintenance reports showing outages, repairs, failures. Witnesses recalling the overpass dark more often than lit. He doesn't need her to see his face, he says. He needs her to know the light was gone, and that phrase placed her under it at the exact moment she vanished. The jurors shift again, unease dripping off their expressions like water from the courthouse eaves. The gallery breathes in unison, as if everyone has been holding air since the trial began. The detective feels the hum of the river through the floor. He thinks of the essay in his pocket, the trains, the caboose unseen. He knows this trial is the same rhythm. The jurors are hearing the engine now, the weight, but the end, the verdict, is still unseen. He feels the pull of absence more than the presence of evidence. Outside, the town vibrates with rumor. At the diner, at the grocery, in living rooms glowing with evening broadcasts, people repeat the phrase again and again, as though saying it makes it theirs. Some whisper it like a warning, some shout it like a dare. Teenagers graffiti it under the overpass, chalk letters dripping from rain. Lights out early, drivers slow to read it, headlights catching the words like an omen. Fear turns folklore into ritual. Parents forbid their kids to walk Whitlock Road after dark, but kids sneak anyway, chasing the ghost of a phrase that outlived the girl who spoke it. Back in the courtroom, the prosecution unveils the photographs. The dented fender, magnified paint flecks, the rope in its sealed bag. The images are sharp, sterile, clinical, but the gallery reacts as if they are wounds freshly opened. The jurors look away, some biting their lips, some staring too hard. The defendant sits still, but his silence now feels heavier, less like endurance, more like resignation. The mother does not cry. She will not give the room that. But her lips move once, silently, forming words no one hears. Perhaps a name. Perhaps nothing. When court adjourns, the square outside erupts. Headlines fly faster than the rain that once soaked the pavement. Jury jolted by chilling audio. Defense scrambles as timeline tightens. Overpass lamp becomes symbol of trial. The town trembles with every word. Porch lights burn brighter, doors lock sooner, whispers multiply. The detective walks home through streets that feel staged, as if every shadow is waiting for its cue. He hears the hum of the river in the distance, constant, patient, mocking. That night, in his kitchen, he lays the essay on the table and reads again. Trains, caboose unseen, absence louder than sound. He closes his eyes and hears the fridge door opening and closing, the hinge creak, the silence inside. He sees the paper crane on the glass at the diner. He sees the shoelaces tied in double knots. He hears her voice, irritated, ordinary, forever suspended in static. And he knows the jury is closer to deciding, but the town will never stop repeating, never stop whispering, never stop fearing, because the phrase has already escaped the trial, already seeped into legend. Solved may come, guilty may come, but folklore will never end. Lights out early, always early, forever early. The 8th day begins with air so still it feels like the whole town has pressed pause. No storm, no wind, just a courthouse standing rigid under pale sky, its windows dark squares staring back at the square below. The crowd outside gathers earlier than ever, bodies pressed against barricades, microphones lifted like weapons, cameras already humming. Words are repeated before the doors even open. Verdict soon, last witnesses, closing arguments. The town vibrates on the edge of something, like a train slowing before a final station. Inside, the courtroom is packed tighter than before. The benches groan under weight. The gallery breathes in shallow rhythm. The defendant sits stone-like at the table, jaw clenched, fingers flat against the wood. The mother sits in her usual place, hands folded as if carved that way. The brother leans forward, elbows on knees, eyes narrowed in relentless focus. The detective feels the essay heavy in his pocket, the paper softer now, worn by weeks of being unfolded, refolded, touched in the dark. The prosecution calls its final witness, a neighbor who lived near Whitlock Road in 2001. She is older now, voice soft but firm. She remembers the night Mara vanished. She remembers hearing a truck downshift slow near the overpass, remembers a small dog barking sharp in the dark, remembers a voice she could not make out but felt urgent. She says she did not come forward at the time because she thought it was nothing. Just night noise, just road noise. But when she heard the voicemail on the news, 20 years later, the hair on her arm stood up. She realized the sounds matched. The jurors lean in. The courtroom breathes heavier. The defense attacks instantly. Memory fades, memory bends. She could be misremembering. She could be influenced by headlines, by rumors, by repetition. But she does not shake. She holds steady. It was the bark, she says. I knew that bark. I still hear it. That's why I remember. The words cut sharper than any science. The jurors scribble. The gallery murmurs. The DA nods once, satisfied. And then it is the defense's turn. They rest their case with a performance. Doubt as theater, uncertainty as weapon. The attorney paces the floor, voice rising and falling in practiced cadence. No body, no weapon, no direct witness. 2 decades of rust and rumor. You cannot convict on ghosts. You cannot call a phrase in static truth. You cannot hang a life on a fleck of paint, a bark in the dark. Each word lands heavy. The jury listens, faces stiff, pens idle. The mother closes her eyes. The brother shakes his head. The defendant's lips twitch, the first movement in days, though no words escape. Then the DA stands for closing. He does not pace, he does not shout. He builds slow, deliberate, every piece of evidence stacked like bricks. The rope, the shoelaces, the truck, the dent, the paint, the audio, the bark, the genealogy, the timeline. He paints the picture again, clearer now, sharper, leaving no gaps for coincidence to breathe. And at the center of it all, he places the phrase. He plays it one last time, raw and unfiltered. Static, hum, bark, voice. Lights out early. He points to the defendant and says, he was the light that went out. He was the shadow under that lamp. He is the reason the word solved finally stands beside this case. The courtroom holds still, every ear ringing with the sound of the phrase, every eye fixed on the man at the defense table. The mother's tears slip, but she does not move. The brother's hands tremble against his knees. The detective closes his eyes, hears the train again, the unseen caboose, the essay whispering in the dark. He knows the jury will carry this weight into deliberation, knows their hours ahead will echo with static and silence alike. When court adjourns, the square outside explodes, reporters shout, headlines roll across screens before the jurors even leave the building. Closing arguments delivered in Oregon cold case trial. Town awaits verdict after chilling testimony. 2 decades of mystery near resolution. The words echo through the streets, through the diner, through living rooms lit by evening broadcasts. Teenagers gather under the overpass, staring at the steady lamp, whispering the phrase like a spell. Parents watch from porches, faces pale, lights burning late. The detective walks home through streets quieter than they should be. The town is holding its breath. Porch lights burn like stars stitched into the dark. Curtains shift as neighbors peek out at passing cars. The hum of the river rises, patient, knowing. He steps into his kitchen, lays the essay on the table again. He reads the line about trains for the 100th time. You don't hear the caboose, you just feel the air shift when it's gone. Tomorrow the jury will decide. Tomorrow the word guilty may be spoken. Tomorrow the town may pretend solved means closure. But tonight the detective knows the story has already escaped verdict, already seeped into legend. Because a phrase in static has outlived a girl, a family, a town. Because even if the gavel falls, the hum remains. Because lights out early, and the town will never forget how dark it felt. The courthouse bell strikes 9, and the town knows it is time. Jurors file in with faces taut, shoulders stiff, notebooks clutched like shields. The gallery fills with breathless bodies, each person packed close, eyes fixed on the wooden rail that separates them from the verdict to come. Outside, the square is swollen with reporters, vans lined like barricades, microphones pointed at doors that haven't yet opened. The air is thick with damp fog, river scent heavy, as if even the weather leans in to listen. The judge speaks first, voice flat, asking if the jury has reached a decision. 12 heads nod. The words fall like a hammer. The foreperson stands, hands shaking just enough for the paper in his grip to rustle. He clears his throat, eyes flicker toward the defendant once, then away. The silence before he speaks is so long it bends time. Then, guilty on all counts. The gallery erupts, gasps, muffled sobs, a stifled cheer, the scrape of benches as bodies shift with sudden electricity. The mother presses her face into her hands, her shoulders trembling but no sound escaping. The brother leans forward and exhales, a long, broken release, eyes wet but fierce. The detective, 3 rows back, closes his eyes. He hears the word guilty echo against the years, echo against the river, echo against the hinge of the fridge door. It does not bring relief, it brings a weight shaped like permanence. The defendant does not move. He stares forward, stone as ever, as if the verdict has bounced off armor. But his jaw ticks once, a muscle twitch betraying what silence will not. His lawyer leans in, whispering appeals, process, next steps, words that scatter in the roar of the room. The gavel slams for order, the noise ebbs, but the air does not soften. It never will. Reporters sprint from the building, voices sharp into cameras. Oregon 2001 cold case solved, jury convicts after 24 years. Headlines bloom instantly. Screens flash the word justice, bold, clean, sterile. But inside the courthouse, the word feels jagged. The mother lifts her head. Her face is lined with tears, but her eyes are steel. She does not smile. The brother squeezes her hand. They sit like survivors of a storm that hasn't truly passed. The detective leaves the building last. He avoids cameras, avoids microphones, slips through the crowd like a shadow. He walks toward the river. The square behind him hums with noise, cheers, shouts, the clatter of celebration. But the river does not care. The river hums the same low note it has hummed since the night she vanished. He stands at the railing, staring at the black water sliding past. He pulls the essay from his pocket. The paper is soft, creased, fragile. He reads the line again. You never hear the caboose. You only feel the air shift when it's gone. He whispers it into the fog, and the river swallows the words without answer. That night, the town glows. Porch lights blaze brighter than ever, as though everyone wants the dark banished, if only for a night. The diner fills with people, voices loud, some laughing, some crying. Strangers toast with coffee mugs. Teenagers scrawl guilty in chalk under the overpass, the letters dripping in the fog. The lamp above them burns steady, a cruel reminder of what once failed. The phrase is repeated like a refrain, not in fear this time, but in ritual. Lights out early. They say it to one another like proof that they remember, like a vow never to forget. In living rooms across town, televisions flicker with coverage. Anchors speak of closure. They call it historic. They call it justice delayed but not denied. Families watch, nodding, shaking their heads, holding one another. But in every home, in every heart, there is the knowledge that guilty does not resurrect, that verdicts do not erase. The word solved on the screen is clean, neat, finished. The ache inside the town is not. The detective lies awake in his small house, the essay folded on the nightstand. He hears the fridge door in memory, opening and closing. He sees the paper crane on a glass of water. He feels the hum of the truck in the voicemail, the bark, the phrase. He thinks about the mother's tears, the brother's clenched fists, the defendant's stone face. He knows solved is a word that sells headlines, but not sleep. He turns to the window. Outside, the river glints in the moonlight, moving slow, patient, eternal. In the darkness, he whispers the phrase once more, letting it settle in the silence. Lights out early, always early. And though the trial has ended, though the word guilty has been stamped into the record, he feels the story is not finished. The river hums, the town hums, and inside that hum, the ghost of a girl walks forever under a broken lamp, voice caught in static, calling into a night that still has not answered. Verdict days should bring silence after storm. Instead, the town roared. News vans never left the courthouse square. Cameras stayed lit through the night, anchors leaning into microphones as though each word could trap history before it slipped away. Oregon 2001 cold case solved, jury convicts. The chyron repeated itself until it lost meaning. On doorsteps, neighbors huddled, some whispering, some weeping, some almost giddy with the strange energy of justice. But in kitchens and bedrooms, when lights dimmed, the quiet that followed felt heavier than before. The defendant sat in holding, stone still, staring at cinder-block walls, waiting for sentencing. He had no words for reporters, no gestures, no breakdowns. His silence fed folklore. Some said he was calculating, others said he was empty. A few whispered he carried secrets the trial never touched. The courthouse echoed with paperwork, lawyers filing appeals, clerks stamping motions, guards shuffling boots across tile. But the gallery, emptied now, held a residue, breaths, tears, mutters, like smoke after a fire. The mother spent the night awake in her living room, hands folded around a photo frame. She did not celebrate, she did not smile. She whispered her daughter's name, not the word guilty. To her, verdict was a word printed on paper. Name was the only word that mattered. The brother drove Whitlock Road at midnight, past the overpass, headlights hitting the chalk letters left by teenagers. Lights out early. The lamp above shone steady, casting the words into brightness, mocking him with its reliability now. He rolled down his window and whispered something the night refused to carry. The detective walked the river. Alone, collar turned up, hands deep in pockets, he listened to the water drag itself beneath the bridge. The trial was over. The verdict was written, but he could still feel the drawer inside him refusing to shut. Solved, the headline screamed, but solved was too clean. Cases don't close, they calcify. He thought of the essay again. He thought of the trains. He thought of the unseen caboose. He thought of absence being louder than presence. He pressed the paper in his pocket, edges worn soft by years. He whispered the line into the fog, and the river gave him only its low hum in return. The town adjusted in rituals. Porch lights burned later, not just from fear but from habit. Children asked parents about the crane story as if it were bedtime folklore. At the diner, the new waitress folded napkins absent-mindedly, not into cranes but into sharp triangles, as if echoing the story without realizing. Teenagers dared each other to stand under the overpass at night, whispering the phrase into phones for videos. The phrase itself had escaped the courtroom. It lived now as warning, as dare, as chant. Lights out early, a superstition no verdict could bury. Reporters packed up slowly, reluctant to leave. Every broadcast ended with the same question: had justice been served? Anchors smiled, said yes, conviction proves the system works. But the town didn't feel that clean. They remembered the years of silence, the birthdays missed, the posters sagging on the grocery corkboard, the fridge door opening and closing. They remembered the moth in the lamp glass, the shoelaces bright as traffic lights, the voicemail static. Justice was paperwork. Memory was heavier. Sentencing loomed. The DA spoke into cameras with calm satisfaction, calling it closure. The defense muttered about appeals, about errors, about time-corroding evidence. The defendant kept still, a statue of denial or acceptance. No one could tell. The family stayed silent. The town whispered louder. Rumor crawled through alleys and over fences. Maybe there was more. Maybe someone else was involved. Maybe the river still held something the trial ignored. The detective sat at his kitchen table, essay spread before him, a cup of coffee cold and untouched. He thought about the jury, about the faces that carried the weight for 12 brief hours before setting it down forever. He thought about the family, about the brother's clenched fists, the mother's folded hands. He thought about Mara's voice caught in static, not frightened, not desperate, just annoyed by a broken lamp. And he thought about how that ordinary irritation had become a town's eternal legend. When he finally slept, he dreamed of the fridge door again, opening, closing, empty every time. He dreamed of the paper crane balanced on a glass, wings damp from condensation. He dreamed of shoelaces floating like weeds in the river current. He dreamed of a train passing, engine roaring, boxcars rattling, caboose unseen. He woke with sweat cold on his skin and the essay pressed to his chest like scripture. The trial was over. The verdict was written. The sentence was coming. The cameras would leave, headlines would fade, the world would move on. But the town wouldn't. The hum would stay, the phrase would stay. The lamp, the crane, the shoelaces, the fridge, the essay, every detail heavier than any gavel. Because the truth was this: solved doesn't end a story. Solved just gives it new life. And in Oregon, in the town by the river, under the overpass where the lamp once failed, the legend had already grown roots too deep to die. Lights out early. Always early. Forever early. The sentencing day arrives under a sky pale as paper, a thin sun fighting through fog. The courthouse square filled once more with bodies pressed shoulder to shoulder. The cameras are back, the microphones lifted like spears, the anchors repeating the words everyone has memorized. Cold case, 24 years, justice served. But the town does not feel like celebrating. It feels like waiting for a bell that may never ring. Inside, the courtroom breathes heavy. The defendant enters chained, shoulders rigid, face the same mask he has worn through every hour. No remorse, no outburst, only stone. The mother sits still in the front row, her face carved from grief, eyes hollow but unflinching. The brother leans forward again, elbows on knees, hands clasped so tightly they tremble. The detective takes his usual seat in the middle, the essay folded soft in his pocket, worn nearly transparent at the edges. The judge reads the sentence in a voice flat as iron. Life without parole. The words echo against the walls, slide across the marble floor, crawl into the gallery. Gasps, muffled sobs, a whisper of relief, but not joy. Joy is not part of this story. The mother does not move. The brother exhales hard, a sound like a wound tearing open. The defendant stares ahead, a single muscle in his jaw twitching once before stilling again. The gavel falls, the trial is over, the case is closed. Headlines bloom instantly outside. Oregon 2001 cold case solved, life sentence delivered. Anchors speak of closure, of justice, finally won. The town listens, nods, shakes heads, mutters under breath. At the diner, people raise coffee mugs in toasts that feel forced. At the grocery, strangers speak softly in checkout lines about where they were the night she vanished. Teenagers chalk the phrase again under the overpass, lights out early. Letters smudged by rain, rewritten again and again like a ritual. The lamp above burns steady, halo bright, as if mocking all of it. The detective does not go home. He walks to the river instead, the same path he has taken too many nights to count. The water moves slow under the bridge, black, wide, eternal. He pulls the essay from his pocket one last time, the words so faded he can barely read. You never hear the caboose. You just feel the air shift when it's gone. He whispers it into the fog, lets the river take it. The paper slips from his hand, drifts once, twice, then sinks without a sound. He watches until the ripples vanish. Behind him, the town hums. Porch lights glow late into the night, not out of fear anymore, but out of habit, out of memory. The mother sits in her living room with the photo in her hands. The brother drives Whitlock Road again. Headlights, striking chalk letters that will never wash away completely. Children fold paper cranes in school cafeterias, half aware of why. Teenagers lean under the overpass, whispering the phrase into phones, daring each other to listen. And the detective stands by the river, listening to its endless hum, the same hum caught in the voicemail, the same hum that carried through 24 years of silence. He knows the verdict will fade from headlines. He knows appeals will come and go. He knows the word solved will be stamped in ink across official records. But he also knows the story will never leave this town. It will live in whispers, in porch lights, in chalk under lamps, in the hum of the river itself. Because some cases don't end, they become folklore. And folklore does not need verdicts. It needs only memory. It feeds on the details that never die, the shoelaces tied in double knots, the crane on a glass of water, the moth trapped behind a lamp, the voice caught in static. The town will keep repeating it. The river will keep humming it. The phrase will outlive everyone who first heard it. Lights out early, always early, forever early.